Hi, my name is Wes.
And my name is David.
And we are here today to talk to you about hand grinders. Now, there's a lot of choice of hand grinders on the market, and there's a lot of videos out there, frankly. So what we're going to concentrate really on is comparisons of usability, a little less on the grind size. We have found that grind on all of these grinders is going to be pretty good and a big step up from maybe the blade grinder that you're using already, and obviously it's more convenient. But generally, I think the things that make the difference are aesthetics, feel, and usability, and that's going to depend on who you are and what your needs are to what's going to be ideal for you. So we are going to start talking through a few hand grinders, and we'll begin with some Hario grinders, which have been around for so long and virtually everyone who's ever looked at a hand grinder will be aware of. So we're going to first have a look at the Hario Slim and Skirton. This is the Hario Slim. It is the cheapest hand grinder that we have, which doesn't mean that it's bad. It still has a really good grind consistency. It is entirely made of plastic, so it is really light. In fact, it's the lightest grinder that we sell at around 260 grams. And generally pretty easy use. You have a ceramic burr in there. You change the grind by turning this nut on the inside. You go anti-clockwise for coarser, clockwise for finer. It is a really functional, super light, entry-level hand grinder.
The next Hario grinder we have is Skirton grinder. So the burr set is same as the Slim grinder, but the biggest difference between the Slim grinder and Skirton grinder is grind size adjustment. So most of the hand grinders has a grind adjustment knob on the bottom of the upper parts of grinders, but the Hario Skirton grinder doesn't have the adjusting knob on the bottom, but it has on the top. So it is more classic style of adjusting knob. So you pull out the top part of the knob, and then when you remove the handle and the lead, then you can adjust the grinds. So one downside of this function is there's no reference point of the 0, but you can counting the rotation by adjusting finer or coarser, and then this holder keeps your grind size in one place. So that is the biggest difference between Slim and Skirton, and between Skirton and all the other hand grinders. And one of the big upside of Skirton grinder is grip. So it doesn't slip when you grind it, and it has a roller pad on the bottom, so it stays in one position very well. That helps your grind speed more consistent.
I think the other thing I'd say around the Skirton is it is the highest capacity hand grinder that we have at around 100 grams. And another little thing on the Skirton which not a lot of people know is obviously you've got a glass base. If you break this, of course you can buy a replacement, but it's also exactly the same connection as on a mason jar, so you can always use a mason jar to grind into as well. Some other differentiators between these two grinders is that because this is entirely plastic, this is probably what we'd choose and recommend for traveling. It's really resilient. I don't think I've ever seen a broken one, so ideal for traveling. And one final note is the ceramic burr sets on these are identical. In fact, they are pretty much the same on virtually every Hario grinder, apart from a couple that have some very old school metal burr sets in there. Both of these are definitely our cheaper end of the grinders that we have, but both are still really effective at what they do. So those are our most popular Hario grinders. So next we're going to move on to Pawlex grinders. Now, these are pretty much the iconic design of grinder, and these have been copied by a lot of different people over the years. But the Pawlex grinders come in two different sizes. You have a tall and a mini. There you go, DK. And these have a couple of different capacities. Obviously, this is 30 grams capacity, that's around 20 grams capacity, and the only other difference is that the mini comes with this little band to hold your handle. I've got to admit, I sort of love this grinder because we've sold it since we first started the company. Firstly, Pawlex as a company is just a very, very cool company. They have amazing values. They have an amazing owner who is just an amazing person to meet. She's really cool, and she puts a lot of time and effort into making sure not just that the products are great, but also that her employees are exceptionally well looked after. So that is really important to us. But looking at the grinder itself, firstly, they're pretty indestructible. The only time I've ever seen people buy a new Pawlex is when the design was changed. And the design was changed a few years ago when it went from the Pawlex to the Pawlex 2, and that had a few changes which gave it a slightly updated ceramic burr. It gave it a new handle attachment there. It has a helical attachment to stop the handle slipping off there, as well as a new adjusting nut on the bottom, which we'll get to in a second. Everything about this grinder, every part of the packaging is entirely made in Japan. We really like that as well, very visibly manufactured. And it's really simple. It has a bottom canister that doesn't have a thread, but is engineered as such that it just slides on and stays on and slides off just from friction. It's the same with the lid. And as I mentioned before, it has a different connection. It has a slightly redesign on the regular style of connection. Whereas you put the handle on, when you're grinding it locks in place, and when you stop, you can just put it straight off, so you get much less slip. Going back to that nut at the bottom, you'll see on many of these grinders, it can be difficult sometimes to adjust the grind. What they've done here is they've extended fins on the adjustment nut, which means that it's really easy to adjust. So, for people, especially if you have trouble, if you have maybe dexterity problems with your fingers, or you just prefer it to be easier and to have more leverage, then this is a great choice. The other nice little bonus is that when you finish grinding and you take the bin off, that it will just stand up on the nut as well. One of the final things about Pawlex, which has made it very popular, is the fact that if you have your trusty AeroPress for traveling, it slides straight inside, which makes it much more compact for traveling with. And again, it's indestructible. So along with this thick plastic AeroPress, this makes a perfect travel kit. The only difference between this and the Mini, as I said, was the band. One of the things you can also do with this, if you're pairing it with an AeroPress, is that you can pull this band off, stretch it around the AeroPress, put the handle on the side. This makes everything then is stored in one place for your travel kit, for having coffee on the go. So that is the Pawlex Mini and Pawlex Tall. Anything you wanted to add there?
No.
Thank you for your contribution. It's great. I'm going to put all of Taimour onto him.
So next grinder we have Taimour. So we have Taimour C2, Slim, Mini, and Chestnut X. My favorite parts of Taimour grinder is the grip, the texture of the outside body and the grind chamber. So it has a texture outside, so wherever you grip and however you grip the grinder, you always give a nice hand grip while you're grinding. So it helps to do the consistent speed of grinding, which is impact to your grind quality. And then another parts is their handle design. It is angled handle, so it gives more space for my thumb not sliding on the bar. Anything else you like about?
I know you've talked about that finish, but across the grinders that have that finish, I think not only is it functional, but it just looks really slick as well. Like, it feels really nice to hold. It's not and nice to look at. I think not only is it functional, it's aesthetically pleasing as well. So I really like that. With regards to other things about the grinders, I mean, they produce a really good grind distribution. It's easy to grind with these grinders. They're all slight variations, slightly different burr sets. I mean, the difference is the C2 has plastic parts as well as the metal outer. The Slim is entirely to unibody. I think it's a unibody construction, and it just feels special, I think, when you're holding it. And then like Nano DK, what do you like about the Nano? What's different?
So again, the handle design, you can folding it, so it is good for carrying around and good for like camping. You can grind coffee outside very easily. It saves lots of space. And then another thing is the cap has a magnet, so it holds the lid and handle to the body very well. Another thing I like about the Taimour grinder is their adjusting knob. Different model has different adjustment function, but even their mini and slim C2, which is their earlier version of hand grinder, has really good reference point for grind scales. So that helps to remember where your grind setting for different coffees.
And from a cost perspective on these, the C2 is the entry level. Again, it's got more plastics on there. It's still exceptionally well built. It is the more economy version of the Taimour. This is, again, entirely metal. The burrs, there's lots of different burr options in these between stainless and titanium. We're not going to go too much into those, but I think this is obviously, the Slim is a heavier grinder, but it's just, I think over the long term, this is going to be much more, it's going to last much longer than the C2. And then finally, the Nano is literally just a shortened version of the Slim with a different handle. And price-wise, the Nano is more expensive, this is a mid-range, and this is the cheapest. The engineering goes into making this handle, although it's very cool, it does add a little bit of cost on, but it's so much fun to do. So yeah, I'd probably choose one of these two, but I don't know, I like them all. But it then does take us on to their latest grinder, which looks a little bit like the Nano. And this was really designed to compete head-on in that higher range of grinders like the Commodantes and the Kinus. So a few little things about this, and there is another video with much more detail on this, but this has the same type of handle. It doesn't have that null finish, but to make sure that you can still grip it, it actually is square on the outside, squared off on the outside, so it is much easier to grip. But a couple of my favourite features of this, apart from the handle, is firstly, it's half a turn to get the base off, the ground spin off, which I really hate it when I have to keep turning and turning to get a ground spin off, whereas this you don't. It also has not just a turn, but it has some little bearings that give you a positive click into place when it goes into place and holds it there. So really cool grinder. It is quite heavy, it's around 765 grams, so if you're looking for lighter grinders, this is not the one for you. But if you're looking for something that's super precision, beautifully made, and just looks really good in black, or when we've managed to keep it in stock, the Safari Green, then this could be the grinder for you. But probably my favourite party trick of this grinder is that it has macro and micro adjust on there. So what that means is that you can have absolute settings. So with most grinders here, you're going to have to go to a 0 point, so go all the way to fully closed. Well, that's the first thing on this you don't have to do. It's actually referential to numbers. So if you want grind 1 and you want to communicate grind 1 to someone, you set it to number 1. If you want 17, you set it to 17. It's absolute. And then on the inside, you've also got a smaller adjust. So each one of these 23, I believe it is, 23 larger steps can then be broke down into another 5 smaller steps. Which, well, what does that mean? It means more accuracy. You can go into more detail on your grind and dial it in just to a much finer level, which means that particularly it's going to be good when you get to the espresso end of the scale, when you need that detail of adjustment.
One last thing is I like their details. So most of the time the metal piece, you're worrying about the scratches, but they put the rubber on the bottom of the handle, so you don't need to worry about your folded handle scratching it. Yeah, you can feel the rubber is protecting your metal body.
Yeah. There is another little thing which I've used that for, which I think a few others as well, is that sometimes you'll get a few grounds stuck in, especially if they're static, and if you tap it against the body, it helps you get all of those grinds out, so there's nothing retained in there. So I think just a really well thought out grinder. Again, for more detail you can look at the Taimour Chestnut X video. So next we're going to talk about the Commodante. Arguably this grinder is what started the high-end grinder revolution. It's been around for some time now, and it's probably the most popular high-end grinder currently on the market. It is made in Germany, it is highly engineered, and you can feel it in everything you look at about this grinder. This is the standard in high-end grinding right now. Although the Chestnut X has just come out, there's a lot of ground to make up on just generally the recognition of the Commodante in the industry. you'll see when you buy it, it comes with lots of different accessories, but the grinder itself has a glass base. It has a quite easy to use adjustment knob on the bottom. It comes in various ranges of wooden grind chambers, and it has a top very similar to the Taimour type, which is the lid attached to the handle, and as DK was saying earlier, it has a curve which makes it really quite nice to use and stops you from hitting your fingers when you're grinding.
Another thing I can add on to Commodante is the handle, the size. Compared to other hand grinders, it has a bigger hand knob, so that gives you more comfortable grip. You don't need to use your finger to grip the handle and grind it. You can actually use your whole hands and grind it. So that gives a lot more comfortable grinding experience.
Yeah, I think when I'm comparing the Commodante to the Chestnut X. I think they're both amazing grinders. I think the one thing that I would like an alternative to on the Commodante is having that glass base. If I'm traveling with this grinder, I'm sort of worried about it breaking, and I think that's something that is to be aware of. If you're going to be treating this potentially a little more roughly, then having a glass base maybe isn't ideal. And that's what it comes with. I believe you can get some alternatives, but this is what it ships with, is the glass base. It's also a little bit lighter than the X, but both of these grinders are at the high end of grinding, and if you buy one of these, not only are you going to love the aesthetics of them, and definitely with the different wood options and wood veneer options on this, you have a lot of different choice. You're going to really enjoy the grinders, but a lot of what's going to be driving you is the aesthetic and the feel when it comes to this, particularly in this high end of grinding. So that is the Commodante hand grinder.
Yeah, and for espresso.
See, I just cut him off there. Go for it again, DK.
Yeah, and for the espresso brewers, they need to do the micro adjustment for dial their coffee in. Commodante has red click, which allows accessory parts of the Commodante grinder, so you can attach red click to Commodante, then you can do the micro adjustment.
Yeah. So we're going to add one grinder into here, which is not technically a hand grinder, but an addition to a hand grinder. So this is just the facilitator. So this is a Hario Smart Grinder. We didn't cover this here, but the particular tool that we're using is a grinder aid. It is the Hario Stick Grinder. It has a few different names: Hario Coffee, Handy Coffee Grinder, Smart Grinder, but it's basically a stick. And what it is a super high torque rechargeable grinding aid. So whether it's this or the Hario Slim, you basically put your coffee in the top, you put an adapter on there, and you need the adapter because this has a lot of torque, and if you don't use it, let's see what I'll do here. I've got no coffee in. You know what, I should have put some coffee in first. I did. Here we go. We've got some coffee. I'm going to put a little coffee in because I'm going to show you why you have to have an adapter. So one of the important things, as David has referred to previously, is having a consistency of grind. Now, what this allows you to do, it's got controlled torque on here, so it will maintain the grind speed throughout the whole process. If I put it on the top here, it's got a lot of torque. Have you tried that before?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. If you're not careful, you'll lose a hand. So you really need the adapter. So this out of the box comes with an adapter for the Smart Grinder and for the Hario Slim Grinder. You slide that into the top, press the button, and you can see it grinding away. This is particularly useful if you maybe do have trouble grinding, and also if you're grinding a lot of coffee and it's just a much nicer way to grind, and you're not having to have an entire electric grinder on your counter. So I don't know if you've had a chance to use this before. I think you said you had.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
I quite like it. One thing at the moment is they don't have adapters for other grinders, but I'm hoping that will come soon. So yeah, this is the Handy Coffee Grinder from Hario. It is a great little addition to anyone's grinding routine. So now we've gone through a lot of our grinder offerings, I think it's probably worthwhile to work out what's best for who. If you're just getting into hand grinding, or you're really doing some heavy traveling and you don't want things to be damaged, or you're just budget conscious, then definitely you fall into the Hario area. So the Hario Slim is great for traveling, and the Hario Skirton is still really good value, but also for higher volume coffee grinding, for anything over about that 30-35 grams, then that really is the option you have. On that best balance of quality versus value, I think you then fall into the Pawlex, Taimour C2s, and maybe the slightly more expensive Slims and Nanos. But for the best balance of cost versus value, I definitely see the Pawlex and the C2. They have a lot of similarities, but they also have some differences which will really influence your decision, whether it's ease of use or whether it's you prefer a ceramic burr to a stainless steel burr. On the higher end of the spectrum, when you're looking at if you're looking for sort of that no compromise grinder, then in the selection that we have, you're definitely looking at the Taimour Chestnut X and the Commodante. And I think the thing to understand is none of these things you'll be disappointed with, but depending on what your use is and depending on what you're going to be doing with it day to day and what its main purpose is really going to influence which grinder you choose. And of course, you've got to really enjoy using these. So aesthetics and usability are exceptionally important. DK, anything else to add?
Yeah, so hand grinder, there are wide range of the prices between the cheapest grinder to the most expensive grinder, but the grind quality between all these different range of grinders are not that big, and of course higher end grinder give you a slightly better grind quality, but the difference between the cheapest grinder and the expensive grinder is not going to be the main reason of your coffee taste differences. So when you choose the hand grinder, more focus on the purpose of your grinder and usability of the grinder over the grind quality.
Cool. Just a quick question, DK, do you have a hand grinder at home?
No.
No, I do.
You do?
I do. My hand grinder is the Chestnut X right now. I rotate, but right now it's the Chestnut X, and I've been really enjoying that. But I have literally had every one of these hand grinders at home and enjoyed using all of them for different reasons. So whatever you choose, you're going to be happy. And if you have any questions, you can just reach out to us and we can guide you to the right choice.
Thanks for watching our hand grinder review today. We are uploading our video contents weekly, so please check our social media and YouTube channel. If you have any question or a specific topic that you want us to review, then please leave a comment or message us. And until next time, happy brewing.